There he is. Yep. Adam Silver coming to the podium. This is 19 for Golden State. I know there were some rumors last night that this might be, or certainly earlier today. Is that only today? It might be included in the swap with Chris Paul, but it's staying here in Golden State. And how about that? They're taking Brandin Podziemski from Santa Clara.
Yeah, so wrote in the mock that this was the start of his range. I know he had a great workout with Golden State. I think that this is just a really interesting fit for them. Like, he's a guy that fits in terms of ball movement, in terms of shooting, in terms of just overall feel for the game. I think Steve Kerr is really going to like his toughness, his mentality. I had Podziemski in the 40s. I would have loved him as a second round pick for Golden State. I don't see it defensively with him. He has an 8-foot standing reach, 6'5" wingspan at, 6'3", 7'5" in shoes, if I remember correctly, right, Adam? Maybe 6'3", 2'5" in shoes, or without shoes.
Yeah, I don't have the decimals down, but sounds right.
Yeah, so it's like little. It's not quite 6'4" without shoes, and short arms, kind of like a bowling ball. I don't love the way he moves his hips defensively, which is ultimately why I ended up with a bit of a lower grade on him. I just really struggle to see how he's going to contest jumpers and how he's going to be able to stay in front of opposing players. This is a bet on a kid that is super smart and super competitive, being able to overcome those physical limitations. And this is not a situation where they could have traded down for him, by the way. If they wanted him, they needed to take him at 19, because I think that Brooklyn quite liked him at 21 and 22.
I like him in Golden State's system. They're really small, Sam. They're really
they are now, aren't they?
Yeah, and he's a type of guy who cerebral in the way that he plays on offense, and probably self-aware of some of the challenges he may face on defense. I would struggle with him in a postseason series if I'm Golden State, trying to mask him and Steph Curry together for some stretches. And if he only plays when Steph Curry's off the floor, I mean, that's fine, but I don't know. I don't know if I would have used the draft capital on a guy that's who you envision in the postseason long-term, not sharing the floor with your best player.
Yeah, look, I mean, at what point do we start thinking about, well, in the postseason, this core is this core, right? It is going to be Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Kevon Looney, probably Gary Payton. Like, I don't know if they could have drafted somebody right now that would have played over Gary Payton if they weren't comfortable with Whitmore's medical, right? So yeah, I at the end of the day struggle to see how he would have played with the starters in closing minutes anyway.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So like it's a long-term pick then that you hope can play off the bench now, I think.
He's very Warriors-y in some way with his feel for the game. The movement stuff is there as a shooter. I get it.
Honestly, I would have, if I was making a Warriors-specific big board, I would have had Podziemski in the first round. Yeah. I think that he fits their paradigm to a T. Yep. I think that if you were putting him in a different scheme, if you were putting him in a situation where he has to like go and create for himself in some way, like even in Memphis's scheme, I wouldn't love him. Like, I think that wouldn't quite work. I think he's not quite as slithery as like a Luke Kennard. I think he's not quite as athletic as somebody like that. But he's competitive. He's fiery. He's tough. I get it. I don't love the player. He's the exact kind of player that I typically love. I just worry about the tools defensively to such an extent that I'm worried. Like, watching Omari Moore for San Jose State, like, consistently kind of wreck them at Santa Clara. Occasionally it was on Podziemski, like, kind of worried me a little bit more. In that wasn't the only game, by the way.
Yeah, I've had my defensive worries about Podziemski for a while. I had a second round grade on him as well. Had him in the 30s.
Yeah. But again, for Golden State, for this team specifically, this is a first round value that I still probably wouldn't have taken. I would have taken, obviously, Cam Whitmore, but like, I would have taken Chris Murray. I would have taken Leonard Miller. I would have taken Omax probably ahead of him as well. But yeah, like I do think that for the Warriors, this is a more sensible move than it would be for other teams.
Sure. So, Sam, let me ask you a question here, because I know Cam Whitmore coming up at 20, and we can talk about him a little bit more. But before we get, we'll see.
I don't. So I don't know if they're taking him, but I would be surprised if they didn't.
They have to, right? That's I'm not spoilers or anything like that. I should have phrased that differently. Like, this seems like such an ideal fit that we can save the Cam stuff if it does happen. But I want who's the outside of Cam, the highest guy remaining on your board?
Leonard Miller for me. But I knew I was high on Leonard. I had him at 13, and that's the reality. So teams were more in the 16 to 35 range for Leonard, and we're well into that range now. Beyond Leonard, so if Cam gets taken here, and again, I'm kind of assuming maybe I shouldn't get out ahead of myself. Like maybe,
I don't know.
But Houston has a history of taking guys that slip down the board. Like they took Garuba, they took Ty Washington, they took. You can go back through their little run here with this front office. They have a tendency just to take the guy that slips. Houston, if they take Cam Whitmore, is going to end up with my third and fifth best prospect. And for them, it would be third and fourth best prospect. So home run across the board. And by the way, I would have taken a men over Cam if I was them. I talked about that on podcast, even though I had a men fifth and Cam third. If I was them particularly, I would have been a little bit more worried about adding Cam Whitmore to Jabari Smith and Jalen Green, who can have the ball stick a little bit too much. But at 20, you just fucking live with it. Like, I don't, that's silly. If Whitmore goes here, Miller will be the only guy of my top 16 remaining.
Okay.
And then after him, it's Chris Murray, who I imagine will go somewhere in the top 24.
Yep.
And then after him, we get into like the pure question marks of like Sensabaugh, Whitehead, Noah Clowney, Nick Smith.
All right.